Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Cuppa Press. My name is Dinesh Ravindran, and I'm part of the marketing team at Paperfly. I'll be host for this episode titled Selling in this Digital Economy. And as a guest speaker for this one, I have with me Mike Cook. Mike and I worked together during during our stint at Cognizant. He's a fantastic speaker, an excellent thinker, and he's also got a broad range of experience in the services market, particularly in the field of customer experience, buyer-side advisory, talent and workforce solutions, cybersecurity, to name a few. He's also worked with the analyst firms like Nelson Hall, HFS Research, and during Cognizant stint, he was part of the Center for Future of Work. And currently, he's the Director of Research at DT Consulting. Mike, if I may put it right, his expertise lies in identifying the changing dynamics of the business ecosystem and culling the thought leadership out of it. Mike thrives in change. He loves change. So with that note, the topic that we'll be discussing is selling in this digital economy and what has changed, how to cope.
Hi, Dinesh. Well, firstly, thanks very much for having me on the podcast. It's great to chat again. As you mentioned, we have worked together in the past. So just a little bit more about, the work that we do. We're essentially trying to help businesses look 5 to 10 years ahead of the future as to how their business has changed. And of course, in the light of this COVID pandemic, that change is more profound than ever before. So we're working extremely closely with our clients right now, and we're essentially hand-holding with them. But essentially, it also comes down to the fact that us as an organization are growing and taking on these same growing pains at the same time as our clients. So we've looked at this from a number of different angles. And I think one of the biggest takeaways we're going to see as we look back on this time in society is that this has been online's big bang moment. This has been the push that many companies needed to really take on new digital strategies. And that is multifaceted. So from the most obvious is, of course, the new work at home revolution. So in the professional services world and across industry, we've seen a massive push towards home working right now. But then again, you need to have the platforms that enable that. So we're seeing huge investments into online collaboration tools like Zoom, which we're using right now, Microsoft Teams, which I use within my role, and numerous others. And we've actually seen these types of platforms, which are much more collaborative and easy to use, replace some of the old legacy platforms, obviously not naming any names, that we had in the past. So that's the one move to digital that this is forced. But then on the other hand, we've seen other industries such as specifically retail and even small scale retail having to rapidly adjust to an online environment and having to change the whole way they do businesses. I'm not too sure how it is where you live, but around my area, we've even seen petrol stations offer Deliveroo type services for their grocery stores. Wow. So there's a huge sudden push towards an online digital environment. And I think the agility of so many industries has been amazing to see. Gyms, for example, have gone to online classes, and they did that almost immediately. And we've seen these types of things happen throughout industry. So that is fascinating. But then again, you bring up the question of sales. Now, sales is interesting. I've been a salesman for many years of my life, and I always like to see the whites of somebody's eyes. I always like to sit with somebody, talk to them, understand their issues, and then see how we can adapt our services or our products to help overcome those. And that's no longer the case. And I think that's okay, actually. I think we're going to change the way that we think about business profoundly off the back of this. So we're seeing business travel really starting to lose its cool factor. Of course, that's just not an option right now. But I think we're sitting back and saying, well, are all these in-person meetings really necessary? Because right now, you and I are interacting over a digital platform, and we're doing so very, very well. The days of the online Zoom bingo are gone, really. I think as people become much more comfortable with them, and therefore as we move into the sales environment, sales are going to become much more collaborative and much more easy to essentially scale through this online environment. So what I mean by that is that salespeople moving forward will be able to interact with a much greater number of their clients more personally than ever before. And of course, in this time of unbridled disruption, a very collaborative hand-holding type approach is really, really beneficial. We're seeing this with our clients now. They're desperate for solutions. and we're desperate to provide those solutions. And I think that type of symbiotic relationship is now proving more useful than ever. Then, of course, you know, I think that's probably one of the best examples right now. But also, we need to change the way we think about delivering services to our clients in maybe very in lower touch environments. So if we look at e-commerce, of course, has been around for many, many years now, and it's very good. If we think about our Amazon type experience, the service delivery is good, but is there really customer delight within that service delivery? I'd argue that maybe not as much customer delight in that online journey as what you could potentially expect. And I think this is again going to mean a bigger push for that more passive sales channel to really, really move into digital customer delight style interactions. So we're thinking a move towards augmented reality interactions on e-commerce sites, virtual mall tours through VR headsets, those types of things that are really taking people's digital or e-commerce game to the next level. I think that is really going to be a way that sales is going to adapt and change in this new modern post-COVID world.
Fantastic. That's a brilliant insight that you bring to the table, Mike. Especially with respect to e-commerce, right? I have a question. We have a lot of our customers who are in the smaller segment. For example, one of our customers is into bathroom remodeling, right? A very small scale customer who is based out of North America. And what kind of opportunities will they be able to avail in this change? Will they be able to adapt as quick as you think into the future of the changing e-commerce models, as you just explained?
Yeah, well, I think they have to. there's no option not to really right now. So when I say this has been online's kind of catalyst moment or big bang, it has to be. It's not out as a nice to have anymore, but it's absolutely essential. And I think we've also seen a redistribution of budgets. So yes, there is a cost to making this happen, and that can be a huge hindrance for especially smaller companies. So yeah, we understand that. But there's also going to be a reallocation of budgets as well. So previous spend into any type of marketing activity, any type of in-person marketing activity, of course, has been scrapped. So therefore, there is a potential to reallocate budgets, even in slightly smaller companies, to help move them towards that digital e-commerce environment. And we know it is a challenge, but there are a number of e-commerce companies out there that implement these strategies for smaller organizations like that.
Fantastic. So how difficult or how neutralized will it be to personalize your messaging here, Mike, when the whole world is shifting to this new dynamics of e-commerce and digital interactions? How will the personalization look like? Earlier in the sales world, the personalization is the key, meeting them in person and having the customized set of messaging. Now everybody will be able to do that. So how will that personalization impact and how will it change?
Well, I think personalization is of course important. And if we're doing this over the digital realm, we need to make sure that we're never perceived as creepy. So, you know, of course, the use of cookies, et cetera, has been questioned for many, many years. And of course, we see as one of the big issues off the back of this off the back of this pandemic is the breakdown of privacy. And the reason I say that is we've seen a huge move now by governments to implement track and trace technology. You know, China, for example, has mobilized their social credit system in a way to track and trace the movements of infected persons and to make sure that people around them are aware of their presence, which is, if you think about it, absolutely terrifying. And we've seen this in China, but we've seen it in Singapore and also some other countries. And of course, in the UK, where I'm from, the government is very soon going to come out with a track and trace app that we'll have to download and use. So therefore, I think people are going to be more sensitive than ever about privacy and about data collection and data hacking. And I think taking that in mind, we need to be very careful that whilst personalization is of course hugely important as we come out to our clients, if we're using big data sources to create that personalization, I think tread very carefully would be my advice, because people are already quite sensitive about the security and the privacy question.
Interesting. European region has always been ahead of the world when it comes to privacy, and I'm sure it's going to lead the curve as well.
Absolutely.
Uh, how do you think the consumption of content that will change or that is changing, Mike, in comparison to the old world versus the new world?
This is fascinating. This is a really interesting question because I was looking at some data recently. So web usage is up by over 19% at the moment. We're all stuck at home. We're all consuming huge amounts of online material right now. So therefore, as an organization, I think we need to think about how we're pushing out content. And we need to think about that content really carefully because I know some of the major technology players are suppressing COVID style content. So we need to make sure that it's not overly focused around COVID, but it is related to customers' issues or also potential products. So those types of endeavors that are a bit more generalized are great, but right now we're in a stage or in a state of content consummation or content consumerism. So therefore, we need to push that as much as possible, and organizations need to get as much content out there as possible that's relevant, entertaining, engaging, that their customers can consume. But again, do so responsibly. One of the big things right now is moving to online or to a social media outreach. So we've seen social media consumption increase by, I don't know the figures here, but I think up to 14% in light of the pandemic. But then we've seen social media advertising actually drop as budgets have been rethought for a lot of the organizations out there that have a budget to reallocate into this area. What I will say is because of these new measures that social media organizations are introducing, such as reducing COVID-style content and of course fake news, the review process for getting your content online has increased. So that needs to be something that you think about as you create content and as you push it out. So my advice would be to keep your content as pre-COVID compliant as possible, but make sure there's a regular cadence of this and think about maybe using social media channels if it's applicable for your industry.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, we will definitely keep that in mind, Mike. When you kind of look at the entire change, if you can classify into magnitudes of 3, that this is the lowest impact, this is the high, this is impacted at the modular level, and this is the highest impact. What would those 3 be?
In terms of just overall kind of macroeconomic changes?
Yes.
It's a very good question. So I would say at your bottom level, I think we as a society have now become more digitally sociable, which I think is a great thing. That can impact numerous fields for organizations out there as they look to push product sets and so on. So anything that encourages digital collaboration between family, friends, but also business colleagues would be extremely popular. So if we've seen the new product that's come out from Facebook, I can't think of the name right now, but there's the online little device that helps you make online interactions with your family and friends. So I think that at the bottom level is a core change that we're going to see from this. The next is going to be the impact to the way that we view business travel and face-to-face interactions. I think now we're going to look at this and say, well, is all the travel we've been doing firstly socially responsible? So we've seen just how the impact is to the environment off the back of this pandemic. We're seeing fish in the canals of Venice. We're seeing dolphins returning to certain parts of Italy. All of these types of changes have been incredible. I think air pollution has dropped by 19 or 20% in many of the world's major capitals, which is fantastic. So we've seen just how dramatic this impact can be as we don't travel as much, we don't consume quite as much as well. So I think our attitudes towards global warming and about unnecessary travel are definitely going to change as well. But then for me, one of the scariest things is the economic crisis that we're going to see off this back of this impact. So that's right at the top tier. And for me, trained as an economist, I am very, very concerned. People in the travel and hospitality industries right now are really suffering, and we need to keep that in mind. Certain industries such as essential retail are booming, of course. And of course, pharmaceutical is booming as well, but the impacts to huge swathes of our society are going to be felt, and they're going to be felt for a number of years. In the UK, we've had massive lending to help buoy up the economy, which has been fantastic, but it's not a long-term solution. And of course, we as taxpayers are going to be having to pay this back for years to come. So what I'm worried is, reduced spending in the economies, which will have a knock-on impact to, again, impact numerous parts of industry. So I think that needs to be a top-tier consideration for many, many organizations. I think cost-cutting is going to be a big hot topic moving forward. Maybe reductions in physical space, physical retail space, or office space as well. So rethinks of those. And yeah, then just essentially, we need to build again. That's going to be the next big topic.
Don't we all, Mike? Definitely. So I'm going to tie your last response with the previous one here, Mike. So you just talked about how it is impacting the people in terms of cost and rebuilding their lives and so on. So a lot of people are losing their livelihoods and jobs, especially in this part of the world. There are so many job losses that's happening at massive scale. And we are also trying to be very responsible while messaging and while taking our content to the market. And what would be the best approach to do that in your personal thinking, Mike, to be responsible, but at the same time, push the sales and our content to the target audience?
First, it needs to be relatable. So I think that's the one thing. Make sure your content is relatable, and more aware be more aware than you ever were before, to make sure that there's nothing insensitive in the content you're pushing out. So relatable, sensitive, also socially responsible as well. Make sure that any of the products or services you're delivering do not contravene any types of local laws where your products are being sold, your services are being sold. So I think make sure that is in place first. And I think if you follow those three approaches, you should be quite good to go. So relatable, sensitive, and of course law-abiding in certain in a geographic basis.
Fantastic. So this is again broad-based, but I come back to this again. You did mention this. You covered it, the first response itself. But if you can give, just like how you said, for the content strategy, relatable, sensitive, and socially responsible, if you can give it 3 or maybe more or less strategies for a sales rep to take their in-person sales strategy to online medium, what would they be, Mike?
Okay, so I think we need to rethink our NLP strategies, so neuro-linguistic programming. You've got to rethink that. It's very different doing that in an online environment as opposed to a face-to-face environment. Right. So therefore, we need to be more aware than ever on how to match and mirror, match tone of our clients, understand their unique concerns, because of course, if you remove the business facade from any professional, we're all going through a very, very strange time that can cause huge amounts of anxiety and added stress that we didn't have before. So I think being aware of that and then adapting your persona and your NLP strategy accordingly is one particularly effective method. And then moved from, if you are a hard salesman, I think maybe drop that tactic right now, because we need to be much more collaborative in the way we work with our clients, more so than ever before. Of course, it's always hugely important, but right now more so. So be collaborative and look to problem solve as more than you ever have before. I think if you follow those two methods, and of course then a huge amount of understanding. Many of the execs that we speak to right now are under huge amounts of financial pressure within their organizations as they see declining demand rates for products and services, whilst others are in exactly the opposite bucket. So I think having a level of understanding for the industry that you're selling to. So make sure you're doing your reading. Make sure you're keeping up to date with local legislation and local laws that are changing. And you essentially need to be almost a consultant more than a salesman with your clients right now. So make sure that you're up to date with all the local news as it relates to restrictions on lockdown policy, also all industry news and how the industry as a whole is responding, and any types of best practice that you can identify. Be sure to come forward to your clients with these types of best practice approaches. And I think if you follow those 3 steps, you should make quite a smooth move to this online sales environment.
Fantastic. I think this is a good takeaway, Mike. I will be able to transcribe them and put that across as well. So Thank you so much. I think that was quite an informative chat. And do you have any closing thoughts, Mike, as a takeaway?
Well, I think, I think we've covered most of it right now. Just make sure that you are the purveyor of wisdom to your clients. Make sure that you make sure you're coming up with relevant, relatable content that takes into account all the nuances of the situation as it unfolds. So don't be naive or don't be ignorant of any of the changes that are happening around you, because your clients are going to need all that type of insight as they look to adapt their businesses to this new changing world that we're dealing with. But Dinesh, thanks very, very much for having me on the webinar today. Love chatting to you, and I think we've covered some really interesting content.
Indeed, totally. I would agree with you, Mike. It was quite a revelation. You did bring in some really nice points, and I'm sure this will be very much relatable for quite a few of our audience, and they'll be able to take away a wealth of knowledge.
Fantastic. Well, thank you.